So, where we are in our thought process is education, and then, yeah, I'll take it, thank you. And then consulting. So we're all here to learn from each other, and then once we become informed, we get the opinion of someone else who can see through the trees, because oftentimes in everything, when you're in the middle of it, your perspective is slightly tainted. Yep. So I'm going to hop around for a minute. I'm going to give you guys one of my favorite examples. Number 6. Number 6 was a bar that we financed. Bulldogs on Peachtree Street. The significance of that block is it's one of the last remaining tear-down blocks for high-rises.
Oh, I know what that is.
It's 895 Peachtree Street.
It's kind of close to the box a little.
There's that Mediterranean restaurant right there. It's across from the Vortex.
Yep. Exactly what this is.
Yeah. So, the owner was retiring. The bar manager was a partner in the business, but not an owner in the building. And he wanted to buy the building because it's worth millions, and it'll be worth millions more in the near future. So we put this deal together for him. He's killing it on the door cover. From memory, he was making $80,000 a month at the door profit.
And that's if he was counting it off.
Right.
Okay.
They were pretty good
Just
at counting
saying.
it. So they were leasing the space for $20,000 a month, splitting $40,000 plus in profits. So he was bringing in around 25 grand a month, and the owner of the building was making 45 plus. And so we structured an SBA loan so that he could buy this building. The SBA 7A real estate loan goes up to 90% loan to value. And what's really good about SBA is you can also borrow against your business value. So you can borrow 70% loan to value over the value of a business. Businesses are oftentimes valued at 3.5 times their annual profits. So the business is worth, let's say they're making $70,000 a month. 70,000 times 12 times 3.5. Business is worth a chunk of cheese. SBA starts giving them haircuts after $500,000 in business worth. So we structured it, as you'll find here on the first page, with $2.5 million to purchase the real estate, $450,000 to buy out the remaining business, and he ended up coming to closing with $169,000. Bought a $3 million building. Came to closing with $169,000. So SBA also can do these lines of credit, the little add-ons, $50,000 or $100,000 line of credit. And we also gave him credit for his portion of ownership in the business, but not his portion of ownership in the building, because there wasn't. So there's a number of different types of loans that we put together for this one. So, the SBA would agree to loan 2.4 million on the 2.55 purchase price. And then we structured it with a seller carryback second of 450,000. And our borrower ended up coming to closing and paying all the closing costs with $169,500. SBA is the FHA of commercial lending, okay? That's one way to look at it. They have a funding fee that'll make your jaw drop.
It's expensive.
Well, it's, in this case, it was a $67,000 fee on line 808 to the SBA. Called the SBA guarantee fee. That's where they guarantee performance of your note in the event that you default. But all things considered, it's by far the best structure, lowest interest rate, highest loan to value.
And it's advertising, right?
So that money is rolled into the loan?
Altogether, I don't remember. Yeah, it looks like he was paying the closing costs and a small down payment. And the seller carryback second took a load off of his down payment requirements. The HUD is attached. And then here's the letter of intent from SBA. It is a 25-year fully amortized loan at 6.25 fixed.
This is the Fifth Third Bank?
Yeah, we brokered it through 50th Third Bank.
Which document's the LOI?
I'm sorry?
Which document are you looking at the LOI?
This one here. And here's a seller carryback promissory note. We wrote a business plan for him. So, partial to business strategies with business, commercial buildings. If you're good at a business plan with a commercial business is a good way to go. If you can make a lot of money in business, proof is in the pudding. Acquiring a building that's gonna appreciate and making money with that business is a fantastic strategy. One second. Case in point. We cashed him out on his house to get him his down payment. Structured it with a seller carryback second so that he could acquire this multi-million-dollar piece of property about a year ago. This year, he's gonna be listing it for sale for $7 million. So as far as plans go, this turns out to be a $3 million plan in about 14 months. We're also gonna work with him to assemble the block, just in case he can go high-rise. But his business alone is worth a couple $1 million. His building is easily worth $4 million. He can easily sell this right now for 6. We're gonna press for 7. This is a guy who positioned himself to make millions of dollars in a business real estate strategy. It worked in this case, it's working for him. All the pieces came together. It made my chart for that reason. And It is something to keep in mind. If the skill set is there to create the revenue, facilitate the building, to make everything work. You have a question, Kurt?
Yeah, so commercial is different than single family in that commercial lenders want to have the borrowers, the debt partners, have a personal net worth equal to or larger than the loan. So did this guy have a PFI statement in excess of 3 point something million?
No.
2 point something million?
No.
Well, how's that come to be?
His net worth was the house that he owned and a little bit of cash. And we cashed him out of his house to have that cash.
So how does, SBA doesn't have that underwriting where they want personal financial statement?
Most commercial borrowers don't have net worth equal to the value of the building they're buying in business. Most of the commercial borrowers that we run into have 30% down if it's not an SBA deal, plus a year's worth of reserves. We don't normally work that tight. I don't know what your experiences were, but mine are different. SBA does like to lien everything that you own. So if you come to SBA and say I own 45 properties, they're gonna wanna put a second mortgage on all 45 properties, unless they're at 80% loan to value. So he owned a couple properties. One of them his mother lived in, one of them he lived in. We cashed them out at 80%. They weren't interested in taking on liens on them at that point. And then he needed the cash to meet the liquidity requirements. But this basically took all his money. But what does he care? He's now making $70,000, $80,000 a month when he was making 25. He's gonna recover that in 3 months. And his short-term plan is a very high capital gain, very aggressive high capital. Now he's in a very, he's in the best location in Atlanta too.
So the building owner was was also the partner of the bar, or the building owner was the third party?
Okay, so the building owner was his partner,
Okay.
but the building owner's in his 70s, he's in his
He's only
40s.
partner, and the guy was one partner in the bar.
Exactly. Exactly. So this is a win. This is a victory. This makes our chart. This is a fantastic success story, and it's an approach to making $1 million.
So cash from a buyer of 169K is astoundingly low for the loan and the property that he ended up
That's right.
securing. And so do you see these types of crazy low down payment commercial deal situations?
Yeah. Seller carryback second counts
Yep.
as part of his down payment mathematically, because most of your commercial lenders are just concerned with who's behind them.
So in other words, a 450 note that the seller carried back added to his 169.
Yeah.
SBA looked at it and said, we're getting 6 something.
Right. It made it all work. But there again, he can pay off this note with cash relatively quickly. And
So what are the terms of that note? Does it balloon, what kind of interest rate?
that's in here.
It's a promissory. It's like 10% interest
Yeah.
for 10 years.
The biggest challenge with this one is getting this guy's financials in order. There weren't any. You know, they were just like, I was just like, you're gonna have to spend a little money, and you know, they're slow to move on that sort of stuff, so we had to help him with his bookkeeping, projections, business plan. But you know, we charged, I mean, it's not like, you know, I was a volunteer there too. And there I was, you know, accounting services usually gonna cost you $3,000 or $4,000 to go into this sort of deal. Phase one environmental was like 1,400. They failed him because they wanted to sell a phase two for $7,000. I had a conversation with them though. I explained to them we weren't gonna use them for the phase two. So we'll just give a $500 tip for fixing their phase one. They were okay with it. Because I have,
That's a bribe.
yeah.
Wait, was
kinda-
that City Hall in Atlanta or?
No, some jokers in Jacksonville. So just like, you know, guys,
Good.
really? A dry cleaner from 1976 is causing ground contamination today? It's amazing. You've got the proof to substantiate that? Because if you don't, we might just sue you. Those are the old carrot of the stick. Why don't you take a new look at your report, we'll just pay you $250 an hour for revisiting it. Or just sue you for trying to extort money from us. So, they went with the carrot. They were able to clean up their report, we closed on it. Appraisal, I think, was $5,000. Our processing fee was $3,000. So, you know, it's not uncommon to have $20,000 in the process. You know, our fee is 2%, so you borrow $2.5 million from us, we're gonna charge you $50,000. And you're gonna thank us for making you a millionaire at the end of the day. We're gonna thank you for the $50,000. We'll keep in touch all life long. That's the way it works, win-win. And that's how it was here. And we'll be working with him on the exit. And we hope to see an even stinkier filthier rich. And maybe even make a hard money lender out of him, who knows?
You said you're also working on it as well.
They'll follow the lead. The person that holds out the last usually gets paid the most on those assemblages. And so, but it's a fine balance because sometimes they'll just screw the whole deal by holding out. He's got a business that's bringing in $70,000, $80,000 a month. It's been there for 40 years.
What's the rush?
He doesn't really care if the assemblage happens or not. If it does, he'll get 7. If it doesn't, he'll get 6. It's not really a big deal. It's $1 million, but you know, we'll go for the 7, hope it happens. If not, 6 will come in just fine. So we'll join the community, try to play nice with everyone. If it doesn't go well, we'll still win. His team will still win.
From a real estate perspective, obviously this was an inside job, being that he was a partner with the owner. What's the best way to be looking for commercial properties?
So, prime real estate, Peachtree, Piedmont, you know, downtown Ackworth, downtown Smyrna, downtown Marietta, those up and coming downtown areas. Different areas that are gonna be in demand, that are hot. And then to grow that with a business, I think that's every McDonald's franchise's plan since the 60s. Have been to make money off the equity appreciation in the building, not necessarily the profit of the business.
Pine Nursery. Pine Nursery.
Pine nurseries too.
That's the business, Pine Nursery, old business plan was to pay for the property on the retail store.
Now, if the business can complement that by being profitable, then you've got a dual effect. Because a business is worth at least 3.5 times its annual profits. That's the lowest multiplier. Some of your IT businesses are worth estimated 16 to 17%. I think LED light manufacturers are the highest at 17%. But any business is almost always worth 3 times its annual profits. That's called the business valuation profit multiplier. And then the real estate. So if you can put together a winning combination of the two, it's an awesome strategy. selling notes, offering notes. It's also a consistent way of getting a safe 10 to 12% return. Those people who do that are also in the creative financing, creative money-making category, in my opinion.
I guess off topic, this fellow here just retired, he's got a 401k that he's moved to self-directed. You take in people's self-directed money and offer interest rate for them parking money in your deals?
I'll do it in a broker capacity where you can meet someone directly and interview the candidate and decide if you want to do it or not. So yes, but I won't take your money and then lend it out because I don't have a securities license like that. But yeah, you can, I can broker deals to you. Most of the time, it's people who have self-directed IRAs want to kick the tires a lot more than your institutional lenders. But I'm happy to send you some if you're interested in that. I'm going to give you guys one more fun example. If you enjoyed that. You guys enjoy that one? Good, I'll try to keep the blood pressure up after lunch. All right, I'm going to give you one more, then we'll evaluate this deal, and we'll go to some apartment buildings. Deal number 7. So,
I've seen that.
business owner approached me, and he wanted to buy this building. It's in Mapleton. I was like, why do you want to buy that building? I looked around in Mapleton, I realized there's no other buildings for sale. That's the only building in the whole city for sale. So he had a great plan. He was going to take half of it, lease the other half for $4,000. Good plan. He had no financials, a newly formed LLC, and he could scrape together $100,000. So, commercial deals, this building was for sale for $620,000. So, SBA will go up to 90%, and that's very high on real estate. But most of your other commercial lenders on a commercial property are usually from 65 to 70% max LTV. Okay? If you got no financials, you're pretty much at 0% LTV. Okay? So you're really limited to hard money commercial lenders, and then they want to see a renovation budget and things like that, and still want to see financials. So I could have probably sold a hard money commercial lender on this deal at 70% loan to value, 13% interest. And they would have charged at least 3 points plus R2, he would have been paying 5 points. Okay? So on this $620,000 building, at best, he would have got to come to closing with 620 times 0.3, $186,000. Plus a 13% payment on the balance. Well, that's plus closing costs. And then his payments would have been 620 times 0.07 is $434,000, about $4,500 a month. 13% of $434,000. How much? 52,000 a year? What's the monthly payment?
Well, 10 is
47.
43.
47.
3 4 is 12.
$47.01. $47.01 a month. Okay, didn't matter. You only had 100 grand, right? So we approached this deal with asking for 100% owner financing. And I loved how this owner financing, I loved how the other side played this. So here's the offer we sent. It was $620,000. Seller paying $5,000 in closing costs. Closing date, we're going for March 23rd. And then we included a good faith estimate and amortization schedule at the end of our offer, asking for 9% on $539,000 with a balloon at the end of 5 years, and included an amortization schedule so that there was no funny business. Thought it was a pretty good offer.
Is it 30-year amortization?
No, it's interest only, I think. No, let me see.
I think principal and interest.
It's what? Yeah, it's principal and interest. Yeah, it was a 30-year am. So that was full asking price. So we offered the 620, 100K cash to close, right? What did we finance here? So 80K cash to close. This is the part we're preparing for your presentations, really makes you look a lot sharper. So that was 539, 80,000 or 85,000 was cash to close, and then seller financing the rest at 9% interest. So the seller says, as a lot of investors do, I'd like to keep this loan on my books for a few years. I don't want to get paid off within the first 5 years. What can I do to secure this cash flow? Has anyone heard that before from an investor? Okay. That's when I knew I was dealing with a pro. And then I was really impressed with him when he knew how to use a financial calculator. So then, if you go to the closing statement, we accepted his counter. He said, tell you what I'd rather do. Let's raise the purchase price to $875,000. I feel like I need more board. So, $875,000. He also wanted to drop the interest rate to 0%. Zero % interest. Note. Last 2 pages of the note, last 3 pages of the note. He put the note in his name personally, which he didn't have to do because it was commercial. So I thought that was pretty impressive too. That way he can cash the checks, of course. 0% interest. The payment which would be 100% amortized, since the interest rate is 0%. Yep, was $4,872.88. So he was pretty close to reading us like a book, to knowing what we were close to being able to get anyway, from the impossible scenario of hard money commercial financing. But that's actually what the, if the principal balance was using 86,000, that would be 5,700. So he's actually lower than what we were.
What you would pay plus.
Yeah, after raising his purchase price and dropping his interest rate to
Blue
0.
bars right on top.
Now, this balloons in 5 years or 60 months.
So your guy's only paying principal
Paying
in 5
100.
years.
Right, so that times 60 plus the down payment equals his payoff at maturity in 60 months. That's $4,872 times 60, that's $292,000
And then the difference between the payoff of 875 and that?
plus the 80,000 comes to 372,000. Subtract the 875,000 gives us a balloon of roughly $500,000. This scenario, he's actually paying a little bit more for the property. So we accepted his gracious counteroffer and closed expediently. And this is a creative financing scenario where the price increased $255,000, but the rate dropped to 0%, and that difference made paying that much more for this property a better deal than even in an impossible hard money scenario.
He'd be paying more for taxes though.
Yes, but when he goes to sell it, his basis is higher, so his capital gains are going to be much less, or possibly even a loss at the original purchase price.
Yeah, so commercial buildings bought on short balloons, I consider 5-year short balloon. The problem becomes, have you increased the value of the building that you can actually refi, assuming he wants to keep it and not sell it in 5 years.
Right.
Right, so he's gonna have a problem of an appraisal and him qualifying for a bank loan.
Well, this building, and oftentimes several commercial buildings like it, are very difficult to appraise. I had so many appraisers call me to use this building as a comp. After
Well,
we-
875 in public records,
That's
yeah.
it.
I know, right?
Yes, right? So, this became a common comp this year in Mapleton. Okay, believe me, every appraisal done in Mapleton had this as comp 1. Okay, now, in 5 years from now, I don't think he's gonna have any problem having it appraised for 875, what he paid for it, but he doesn't need 875. He needs,
The balloon.
yeah, he needs to cover the balloon. And he'll have financials, and at that point in time, he's gonna have a business financials that can meet that sort of expectation. And don't forget, he's only occupying half the building. He's got 51% of this building. At 51%, you can count the lease as additional revenue and his business revenue as well.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, but the appraisal has to come in at 714 at a 7% LTV loan.
Yeah.
In order for him to get through a refi with no cash to closing.
Okay.
But supposing he does have enough cash, I mean, hopefully he's gonna succeed, so is he actually gonna hit a real wall, or is he only hitting a wall if he doesn't have cash, if he can't bring cash to closing?
I mean, if I'm able to answer questions like that 5 years in the future, you won't see me here.
No, I'm saying clarify your object, clarify
Give
your
me 1
objection.
minute.
All right, so seller financing
Great shot.
has a trap built into it. Is invariably, as in this case, seller financing, the seller inflates the selling price to something completely crazy. 875 is crazy, but it numerically works for the seller and the buyer in this case. There's no comps for 875. It's just out of thin air that the
There's
seller.
no comps at all.
Right.
So Mableton was,
The problem with the balloon
foot
is, you've got to increase the value of your property before the end of the balloon, then you can get a commercial loan that, at whatever the LTV, 70% or whatever they're gonna give you, that you've increased enough where at 70% LTV, it takes out that balloon debt.
Right.
And a lot of businesses, you just can't increase the NOI to justify that new appraised value. In 5 years, in 10 years, a 10-year balloon, yeah, safe. In 5, maybe 500,000 is safe, but in general, a 5-year commercial balloon is pretty risky.
I think this is a safe transaction in his case. From a cash flow standpoint, the other side rents for $4,200. He's gonna be cash flowing really well for 5 years, so he does have to pay it down. He could come up with $100,000, he's able to save $100,000 a year, so he could potentially come up with significantly more. But I like that he increased his cost basis to $875 on the back end, because if he does leave this a winner, he's gonna offset a huge tax consequence with a high basis. And if Mableton increases at 6% a year, and we're talked about the development going west, just at the rate of appreciation Atlanta's going, 620,000 present value, 6% yield, 60 months in, compute future value. We're at 836. So, I greenlighted the whole transaction. I think it was a great move.
Did this have any tax benefits for the seller?
Seller is, he's South American, okay? Super savvy guy. Never talked to him at all. Talked to only his attorney the whole time, which was also singularly impressive. He did 0% interest, I knew at closing, when he put his name personally as the note carrier so that he could collect those checks in cash. And then he's of course gonna 1013 exchange it, if he still lives in the States.
Sounds like it came out wider than it went in.
Yeah. So, he played it to the max, no doubt. But he gave the buyer the best case scenario. I mean, I couldn't have done close to as good as he did. No one could have. No financials, brand new LLC. So, this is an example in creative financing, and this is two examples of owner financing playing a big role in commercial.
So this guy, what was his business, the buyer?
The buyer, he catering, and he rents the dance hall and international business.
Did he have a separate company for the building? Was that a separate company?
I always tell people to put the building in a separate entity. He didn't do that at closing, but I think he performed that and transferred it over later. So I thought those were fun.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand Kurt's point and how it relates to this, right? So, I think Kurt's saying that the loan of value would be, 70% of the 875, which is, I think, like 620, right? But in this case, the buyer, all his payments are going towards principal.
Right.
So, at the time, at the time of the balloon, he only needs to come up with maybe 500 or something thousand.
That's correct.
So it's pretty safe then that it's built in, we're not even factoring in the appreciation of the property.
Right.
He has like almost a guaranteed surplus of 100,000.
No, the problem with the balloon amount is 500,000. So get another commercial loan so that you don't have to bring cash to closing, and typical commercial loans are 70% LTV. So if you take 500, divide by 0.7, the appraised value has to be 714 or more. So the lender says purchase price or refi amount is 714, loan amount 500, no cash to closing. But what if it appraised for 600?
Then you bring another 100 grand to close.
That's right. But sometimes folks give deals back to the lender and to the seller financer because they can't pull the deal off.
Or you might work it out with the seller.
Right, a haircut.
Maybe after 400, 5
Right.
years from now, and finance some more.
But also being that the seller put his name personally as the note holder, he probably doesn't plan on it directing this litigious situation. Because there's considerable skin in the game. But yeah, those are legitimate concerns. All things considered, our buyer has 5 years to come up with another 100,000. It's $20,000 a year. He's making $4,000 a month on the space next to it. He was leasing for $7 grand a month. I think everything's gonna come into place for him, and I think it was a great transaction, all things considered. And more so, it's an example of the manipulation of the present value factor and the financial calculations of things. Because what we did here, more than anything else, is put a 0 as the yield and calculated the present value. It was a bigger number than what the seller came up with, so it was a thumbs up for us. And that's the mental process. So those are a couple fun ones, I thought. You guys have fun with those?
Sure.
That's for me, Now, on the residential side, you need to run for your life if you ever have a guy try to mark up a property $200,000 and sell it to you at 0%. Especially if he holds a note in his name personally. But on the commercial side, it can make sense. Also, this property was undervalued at one point and it was rehabbed. It's a pretty big building on a busy street. We all have high hopes for Mapleton. We talk about West Development, West Midtown, Northwest Atlanta, we like the industrial areas, and so Mapleton's on our chart. Okay. I'm gonna jump backwards one more time to number 5. Here's a plaza, it's a commercial building. Sometimes what's fun about commercial is that they're triple net. The tenants are responsible for taxes, maintenance, utilities. Has a nice additional feature as a landlord when things are triple net. Also, a lot of your commercial buildings have long-term tenants. The building here is in Columbus, Georgia. It's offered by an agent that we work with from time to time. And let's take a look at it. Amber Vista Plaza, offered at $625,000. This is really actually on the market right now. All the other deals are actually closed. We've got deals that we've actually done and closed. This one is not. This one is available on the market today. It's number 5. Anybody missing number 5?
No, it came out earlier.
Dollar General.
Oh,
It was in a previous stack before this last one.
If you need one, Karen can help you out. So, cap rate if you're paying cash, both cap rate and debt service coverage ratio, you're financing. NOI is $84,346. Value 625. I didn't prepare this, but we'll check the preparer's math. $13.49 cap rate.
Yeah, just comment here though, I'm not just looking at commercial property, the gross rent is 97.6. You're using 84.3 as NOI, they're only using 13% operating expense. So that's your triple net lease coming into play or something.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty low in terms of residential,
Right.
but not for commercial.
They anticipate a 2.4 debt service coverage ratio based on a 7% rate and 20-year AM with a 30% down. Decent numbers. Interested in if the major tenants are renewing? That would be your big question. Is Dollar General?
How many leases left?
Yeah. So if you go to the next page here, Dollar General has, they've been there since 2004. Their lease ends in 2020. So anyone entertaining this would want to talk to Dollar General and ask them if they're leaning towards staying.
But how will the new Dollar General, the cap rate is only 6.7?
Yeah. Exactly. So, another commercial example. On our examples, we've gone over 2 owner-occupied investment strategies. The stronghold and the house hopper. We've gone over 2 residential investor strategies, fix and flip, and the short-term buy and hold. Now we've gone over 2 commercial strategies, and 1 creative. And last but not least, we'll discuss apartments, apartment buildings.
Sure.
Unless anyone has a question.
All right, sure. I gotta start out somewhere.
That you might get a 1-year buyout or a 6-month buyout on a 20-year lease. But I definitely want to lock in for as long as possible. Especially if I'm in risk of going bankrupt or non-solvent or chapter 11 or dissolving the business without recourse. Now, apartment buildings come with challenges. One of them would be 100% turnover of the units. Constantly have to fill your apartment buildings. You have 40 doors, you need 40 people. You want 40 good people, you need to collect 400 worthwhile entertaining applications for occupancy. Maintenance is much more. You'll need full-time occupancy, full-time maintenance. Now, I'm gonna assume that most of us here would be entertaining financing an apartment building, as opposed to buying one cash. So it's gonna come down to the debt service coverage ratio in this building also. If you have an apartment building that's worth $1 million, you'll have to come to closing with $300,000 to buy this sort of a building. It is a down payment intensive dynamic, similar to a commercial building. 30% is going to be the expected down payment criteria. You should also have another 10% at least in reserves after that 30% down payment, as a minimum. Now, if you were to find a building for $1 million that had 40 doors, it's not uncommon that your interest rate may be 7% in that sort of a building. There is banks that go down to 5.5 full documentation in that sort of a building as well. But let's go with 7% as an interest rate to be conservative. $700,000 at 7%.
4657.
Let's go with a 20 or 25-year AM. It's more common on that style of commercial building. Let's just say 20-year AM. No.
Yeah, do 25.
This would be your principal and interest payment. Let's take it up to 7,000 with taxes and insurance. We have 40 units. That rent for $700 a unit. It's 28,000. Now let's take off 40% for vacancy and maintenance.
Let's multiply times 0.6, yeah. There's 12. 201,600 a year NOI.
How much is that annualized?
201,600.
What's our cap rate? What's our DSCR? A good investment?
2.4, cash.
1.5. 1.2.
Is it time intensive? Probably. Right. Most buildings that you'll find like that are not gonna be in Atlanta, they'll be in the surrounding areas. It's actually one that we're working on that meets this exact criteria.
700 rent for $25,000 a door.
It's actually a little bit more. Could be filled well with the right type of marketing.
There's a lot of river they're converting
Next to a
things into
hospital,
apartments and condos.
That's recommended.
Right in downtown.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I think it's a good opportunity. It's a great way to turn a couple $100,000 into $10,000 a month.
Is your client strategy to do a short-term hold on it?
No, this would be a long-term cash flow. So, assets and income is something that we all have to manage. When we start going more into what to do with your assets and how to turn that into income, or how to cash out on assets to reach your goals, that's the real personal question that we're gonna try to find solutions for. Some people have $200,000 and they're happy to put it into a mechanism that's gonna generate passive income or some income they have to micromanage for the long term. And some people are the vice versa. Some people are trying to arrive at the number and have already invested in property, want to cash out and put it into another engine, such as a stock market. Whatever it is that your goals are that you are striving to seek, whether it's income or assets, or some sort of manageable combination of two, those are the numbers you have to arrive at to pencil in your plan. So that's the personal decision that I hope I can help all of you arrive at. And it's the toughest decision that you have to make. You know, people have anywhere from $100,000 to $1 million, or people have needs to or wants to retire from their jobs that they don't like and want passive income, or a combination of the two. So mathematically, you have to arrive at the combination that suits your needs and lifestyle wants. And that's going to be the challenge of this class, to arrive at that. And that's where once you go through all of this, you systematically know what you definitely want to do or you definitely don't want to do. You can isolate those scenarios to arrive at what you prefer over another. And then with your existing resources and savvy and talents, you decide which direction you want to go, solidify your passive income or not, or arrive at your value number, whatever that goal is for you. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. This is a fun example, oversimplified, so don't get caught up in too much of the analytics. You get two brothers, Cecil and Sam, both picked up 3 properties worth $100,000 each, free and clear, and rent for $1,000 per month gross. So Cecil's 3 properties are worth $100,000, collects $1,000 per month, pays $100 for taxes, $100 for insurance. I'm sorry, it's $100 for taxes and insurance. So he nets $900 per property. He receives $27 per month in income, which equals $32,400 a year. Sammy, on the next page, Cecil's brother, same 3 properties, decides to leverage them, maintaining a 1.5 or better debt service coverage ratio, with consideration to his age, he's leveraging 80%. Doing all this conventionally, in this example, he's able to pull out enough money to put down payment on 12 houses. Conventionally, he has a low debt service coverage ratio of 1.7 to 1. Tracking the performance of both of their portfolios, Sam would have 15 properties that net $477 a month, which is $7,155 in monthly income, which equals $85,600 per year, comparatively to Cecil's $3,000. $32,400 per year. So, cash flow is a main consideration here. Secondary considerations, appreciation. At an expected rate of appreciation of 3%, Cecil's worth $404,000 in the same constant rate scenario after 10 years. At a constant rate of appreciation of 3%, Sam and his wife own 15 properties, less than 10 years. Their assets are worth $2 million and some change. He owes less than that and is worth over $1 million. So that would be a conservative market scenario. In a bull scenario, Cecil's real estate assets are worth $494,000 at 5%, and Sam is worth $2,470,000, which he owes less than $1 million. He's worth over $1.5 million. In an aggressive bear scenario, 1% appreciation, Cecil's worth $331,000. Sam's assets are worth $1.657 million. He owes less than $1 million. He's worth over $700,000. Comparatively, in every scenario, Sam is worth more than double Cecil's net worth. Bear, bull, and expected. And that's the power of leverage. And on the last slide there, on page 17, it breaks down the year 1, year 10, year 20 net worth for the expected rate of appreciation comparatively to Sam's. And in 30 years, Sam has the potential to exceed 3.7 million by being leveraged, while at best Cecil's at 737. Sam would be expected to be a millionaire in 10 years and a multi-millionaire in midway through the second term, 15 to 16 years.
Now, as we were talking about this morning, on page 16, you say that debt service coverage ratio is the criteria here. This morning, we were discussing that becomes harder as you acquire more properties.
Becomes harder?
Well, what were we talking about this morning as far as being able to, or no, I'm sorry, DTI?
So DTI, so
Because it makes it sound simple, what you have here presented on page 15 makes it simple. This is that good old Sammy here. He went out and just purchased another 12 more houses. Yet you were discussing this morning that there's a problem with, I'm sorry, I made the wrong statement there.
Sure.
DTI as being the problem.
Yeah.
How would Sammy have overcome that with these 12 additional purchases?
I don't know.
Okay.
But you could put them in a corporation.
Yeah, it's more of an example
As
on,
opposed to a Schedule
it's
E.
more of an understanding of leveraging
Right.
than it is a case study on qualifying debt to income ratio.
Right.
But there's now stated income deals and there's a corporation aspect for borrowing Fannie. There's a presumption that he can. So in a lot of instances, it's safer for the consumer and more beneficial in the long run to stay leveraged.
Right.
And that's more of the study here in the experiment and the fun of it all. So this is a case study of two people that started with $300,000. And in every market, the one who borrowed had a certain loan to value, had good terms, was able to appreciate riches and wealth multiple times faster and better than the conservative approach of staying debt-free.
Is there any number of loans, the maximum you can have?
That's it.
for business?
There's 10 is the maximum number of loans you can own in your name as an individual by Fannie Mae. However, you can exceed that number by proving continuity of liability by showing that an LLC pays the debt.
But there's no limits of soft money loans.
No, there's no limits there.
I mean, you just saw those, the terms were very favorable, or close.
6.125 was the most aggressive soft money terms. And they're in the high fives on conventional loans. So the gap is definitely tightening there. And the federal banks are doing more commercial loans too now for construction. They're bringing that back and they're in the fives.
What's the overall, what's your overall DTI that allow you to sleep well at night going through a market correction? Is it 50%? Is it 60%? Is it 80%?
Okay, so first, are we talking about you or are we talking about a self-employed person? Are we talking about, I'd love to see Donald Trump's DTI. I'm sure he's at 1,000%. Are we talking about someone that really shows their income? If we're talking about a W-2 employee, it depends on how much would a W-2 employee's comfortable debt-to-income ratio be to manage an investment property?
Let's say you got a portfolio of like 10 or 20 properties, what's that overall ratio as either a self-employed person, full-time in real estate, let's say you're an agent or you're some mix of agent plus flipper, whatever,
Okay.
versus if you're a W-2 person, because I've heard don't go over 50 or 60%, and I've heard, open up the throttle and go to 80%. And I don't have enough gray hair.
Can I get on my high horse, because I
Yeah,
hate
go ahead.
DI, okay? DI does not take into account the absolute level of income or debt that you're talking about. It's 50% for anybody, which is what you're talking about. So if your income is 500,000 and your DI is 60, you still got $200,000 a year to live off after all your debts.
Right.
That's a completely different category than someone making 60,000 a year with a 50%, 40% DI. He's got 36,000 to live off, and the bank thinks he's a good loan. And this guy that's got $200,000 to buy food and clothes, the bank thinks he's a bad loan. Really ticks me off.
It's more of a
So it's not
debt service
DI.
coverage.
So what you gotta ask yourself is, after I have to pay all these debts, the income I have left, no matter what percentage it is, right? Is it enough income that I'm not gonna lose my house, I'm not gonna have to drive a junker car, I'm not gonna have to wear old clothes? That's what you have to ask yourself. Do I have enough to live off with that DI? So it's an absolute money thing versus a budget. Does that make sense?
Say that if you have a 1.5 to 1 debt service coverage ratio, right? And that's conservative after your maintenance and all expenses. That means that every other property can be vacant and you're at a wash. So it's not the DTI, it's the DSCR. Because if you have 100 properties and they're all vacant and you make 10 grand a month, you still can't maintain the properties. So the DTI is kind of irrelevant. It's more of the debt service coverage ratio.
Yeah, DTI, it sounds like, I'm just feeding back here, is important on the acquisition side, but the DSR is on the long-term hold side.
Yes, and the DTI is necessary for Fannie and Freddie, and it's not necessary for soft money, non-agency lenders.
And on a single-family rental property, is it common to say you should be able to weather 4 months of vacancy? That's the cushion you should have? Like ballpark, spitballing.
6 months is the minimum requirement for Fannie Mae on reserves per investment property. So Fannie Mae and Fannie Mae's buyer guides suggest that you should have at least 6 months in reserves per investment property and 3 months at least on your primary residence.
I wasn't speaking of reserves, I was talking about cash flow.
Okay.
How many months vacancy should you be able to withstand just stay cash flow positive? 3 months? 4 months?
Depends on your reserves. I mean,
Okay.
I suggest in my course that you have enough reserves to handle a 2-month vacancy plus a $3,000 repair, which usually ends up being $5,000 or $6,000. But only for your first 4 or 5 properties, because 1 month for every $10,000 of income, which means if you got a $60,000 income, you need a whole lot less reserves than if you got $100,000 income.
Well, if your debt service coverage ratio is 2 to 1, you can be vacant half the year, 4.5 months of the year, and so on. So, there's more than one way to compute a mathematical equation that you can feel comfortable with. But 1.5 to 1 will give you 3 months of vacancy on one singular property and still break even.
Right, but I think you're asking big picture, how much DI should
Yeah. So, we're gonna take a break. When we come back, I'd love to hear certain scenarios. You wanna say something, Kurt?
This one for you.
We're gonna go through certain scenarios. You can make them fictitious, you can make them real, you can do whatever you want. We're gonna do a few of these today, and then we'll do more of these tomorrow. And again, the goal is for us to arrive at your plan, whether it's income or assets, if it's a business model, an investor model, an owner-occupied model. So let's start playing with some scenarios, all right?
At the end of one of your handouts was a review form. This review form is per day. You get another one for tomorrow. So if you leave your review form on Karen's desk before you leave, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right, we'll restart at 3:17. Liquid assets. Liquid assets. Okay. Income. How much you make now? How much do you want to make in the future? And when? Time. How much time do you have now? How much time will you have in the future? And when are we talking about is the future? So some people want to quit their jobs. Some people want to quit their jobs in 5 years. Some people want to do this when they're retired. Some people want to do it now. We have to put together timelines to arrive at whatever it is that we're talking about. So we can put together financial plans in place and make all this possible. And it's going to be different for everyone, all around the spectrum. GC experience. What is it? Do you have experience working with people to get work done? It's not easy. Do you have those? Do you have the GC experience to get it done? Do you operate with the sense of urgency necessary to get it done? When it's go time, are you go time? You know, can you rally the troops and pull the fire alarm and get everyone screaming running out this door? Do you have that in you from a construction aspect? Savvy, it's all around fitness. Resourcefulness, the get it done attitude one way or another, more than one way to eat a Reese's cup sort of personality types. Rate yourself on your savvy.
You can learn that, and your network can be your savvy as well.
That's true. For some people it can, and for some people it's risky to assume they can. You know, when I first got into business, I wanted to hire 100 loan officers to give them a phone. It's like, all you gotta do is listen. And then they'll tell you what they want, and you just serve it up like a cheeseburger at McDonald's. But not everyone can do what you do, not everyone can do what the next person does, and making that assumption is sending them on the wrong path more times than not. Some people I would never stick them into a fix and flip, no matter what they say to me. And I've gone against my thoughts and sometimes tried it anyway, and I was like, I knew I shouldn't have stuck that person in a fix. Numbers look great, I still should have said, no, I don't know. I don't know if you have the savvy for it. And we know the type of people we're talking about, and they need to be honest even if it is offensive, and we have to be honest even if it is offensive. So some things are good for some people, some things not. I'm actually one of the few people that are riskier than more. I will go out on a ledge and make a recommendation for certain people to do certain things based on my observations. And my observations, knowing you in the short period of time that we may be with each other, are probably better than your observations knowing yourself. Because oftentimes we can't see the trees through the forest that we're stuck in the middle of.
I'll give you a great flag, you're really very good at what you do.
Well, I have a couple blessings. One of them is I have a really good skill of knowing the person I'm talking to. And I'm good at giving people direction in what they should do. And I'm usually right. My personality type has usually been identified as a counterintelligence or the intelligence. You should be familiar with that Abdurrahim, I think we have in the same call. So, we're good at analyzing people, reading them, and oftentimes giving them good advice in what direction to pursue. I do need to know what we're working with as far as resourcefulness, assets, scheduled real estate. Is another criteria liquidable assets, because we may be able to restructure things. Time is important. If you got 7 kids at home and you gotta watch them all day, I don't know how you're gonna do much else. Right? So, time's a factor. Time's a factor for me. I have a fix and flip in Roswell. Every time I start to go out there, I'd rather do something else. You know, it's still there. You know, my problem is my mortgage, my hard money loan's only $1,500 a month. Every time I go to check on it, my opportunity cost is a lot more than $1,500. I'd rather stay home in my PJs and take a loan request, charge $3,000 and not go to Roswell. It's a real problem.
So do you want to sell it?
Yeah.
I can't sell it because I gotta sell it retail because I'm into it for about $190. It's gonna be worth $240, and I'm almost done with it. So what am I gonna sell it to a wholesaler and make nothing? Or I'm just gonna somehow find the time to go get the people out there to wrap this thing up and then go sell it and make $40,000. But I probably won't ever do it again because it's not the scale to make it worth my time. To do these flips on a regular basis, first of all, switching from field guy to office guy, you might as well cut half your day out and just throw it in the trash can.
The whole day.
At least half. Because to go from office to, from hard hat to pencil, switching tracks consumes half my day. Now maybe I'm at a mental disadvantage because I'm not as smart as Kurt, but it's me doing the best I can. It eats up half my day. I mean, when I was building a house just for my own house, and I was like, I got it. I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna go work on this at 7 a.m. The contractor started. I'll be at the office by 9 a.m. I won't take a tick out of my day. That was an illusion. I had a general contractor, and it's still, you know, go pick out tile and toilets and faucets. Are you serious? What do I know about tile and toilets, faucets? End up hiring a designer for $100 an hour. Huge mistake. End up with a architectural designer who wants to charge you $275 an hour. You got to drive 2 hours to his office and make an appointment every week. I ended up buying the software and doing it myself for cheaper and faster. And then there's one more thing I got to do that I wasn't planning on doing. Now a professional soft plan by accident. That sucks. Didn't want to do that. So. Rehabbing properties, in my world, I would have to do 4 and run a crew and keep them busy and do bigger projects and finish them quickly to knock out 8 a year.
You get a partner?
It's a whole nother nightmare.
It is, it's just like private money.
Yeah, partnerships don't usually work long. Very rarely do they work out. I remember my first partnership. Once we started making passive income, that guy went a trip to Vail, never came back. He was on the ski slopes for the next 2 years, making $40,000 a year on K1s. I'm like, dude, it's like my dad thinks I'm in college. I'm good. I'm like, well, we're gonna have to dissolve this corporation, form a new one because you suck, or let us buy you out or something. He's like, no, I don't want to talk about it. It's disconnected. Stop taking our calls. We're gonna dissolve the corporation, form another one. Stupid fiasco, waste of time. Partnerships don't usually work. Usually on your own, all by yourself on this one. So you've got to say, I've got $300,000, I wanna make 20 grand a month. Or I've got 20 grand a month and I wanna save up $300,000. Or some variation of these things. Okay? Credit, if you need help, just let me know. Time, be honest with yourself. Because there's only 24 hours in a day, there is traffic in Atlanta. You gotta know how to arrange your time. That's a whole nother expertise which I have not mastered. Hopefully, there's a life and air will rub off on me. Supposedly they've got all kinds of time in their magic hats.
I think meditating at about 9 o'clock, going to bed at 9:30, and getting up at 4 a.m. is part of that solution. And no one
Okay.
wants to go to bed at 9:30 and then get up at 4 a.m.
I didn't know there was a 4 a.m.
Yeah.
It was only 4 p.m.
He's retired, so he finds time at 4 a.m.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, he doesn't actually work, this guy, so he's got all kinds of time management advice for us all. Quit your job, number one, it'll open up all kinds of time for you. GC expertise. So, you know, I know a thing or two about a thing or two. I probably know how to troubleshoot a couple problems. But on the scale of things, you know, if you know 90% of what you're doing, that's 10% of a lot of money you're gonna screw up. Okay? So, if you're working with a very high percentile, you'll probably have limited damages, but you still need someone to offset. Two people know 90%. It's exponentially better at 99%. So remember when I built my last major project, I used a builder for a flat fee. I said, hey, here's $50,000. I want everything to come to me, labor, materials. I'm paying for everything it costs. I'm paying you 50 grand. I'll meet you here every morning at 7 a.m. Show me something. Show me what's going on. And you're in charge. You're getting paid a flat fee. I'm going to be in and out in 9 months. And I paid that guy a flat fee. I thought that was a good relationship. I call that a cost plus relationship. I encourage people to use that sort of methodology. It leaves a lot less room for manipulation. You gotta have a sense of urgency with any sort of project that's gonna cost you expense while it's not being actively producing revenue. Borrowed money is the worst example of all of that. So if you don't have that sense of urgency, you don't really go into too many fix and flips, and that's just it. And then be honest with yourself when you rate it on Savvy too. So if we have examples today, we can go through an example today. If we have examples tomorrow, I want to go through as many examples as possible. They don't have to be real world. They can be made up. Okay?
Just credits, I know you're very skilled and you've got some resources for fixing credit scores that are short by 50 or 100 points. So is anyone interested in a little diversion talk by Rick on how to fix credit scores by a couple of hundred, points of, maybe known as credit problems here, credit FICO score.
And so credit's a combination of your loan balances towards the credit limits, how many bills you have. What I do is I run the credit simulators that are offered by Credit Technologies, and they tell me what specific actions need to be done. If it's paying down a bill, paying off a collection, having more debt, or just the balance of the credit limit.
The 3 consultations you're offering folks here would include running the credit simulator?
Yeah. Yes, so we do it for free. The incidental costs are the responsibility of everyone. So it's $22 to pull the credit. Simulator is $5 per bureau. And to dispute something with documentation, through the portal is $25 per line item per bureau, but it's instant. It takes like 3 days to a week to have instant reflection on people's credit reports because our portal is directly into the 3 bureaus.
Why they have a difference in each credit bureau? If I look at TransUnion, that is a different one. EQBEC always is about 30 or 40 points less than TransUnion.
Different. They have different parameters for what affects different things. They have different scoring mechanisms. So Equifax may be harder on inquiries. TransUnion doesn't always report everything. It's all ran differently.
Yeah, some months I'm not doing anything, suddenly some months it drops a few points, the next month it goes up, and again drops. I don't know why it's happening.
Well, during your personalized individual consultation, we'll run it. And that goes for anyone who wants it in the simulator. So let's go through a couple makeshift scenarios.
You said $25 to dispute a line item and it takes 3 days. How long does it take them to go back in and correct it if they find something wrong? Isn't that a painful process or not?
So, okay. When I dispute something, I have a letter from that creditor saying that please update this balance or remove this derogatory. So that just has to be verified. It takes 3 days. If it's a dispute where you're contesting a card and you have disagreement from the creditor, then that's not actually something I do. I can validate agreements.
Clean it out, the easy stuff.
Yeah, like having to throw money at a guy. If you have a situation where you're in a dispute and there is no agreement, then I'm not the guy for that. You can do that yourself, or I can probably recommend a few people. There's some people that can test it.
But would your simulator point out that that's an area that would need cleaned up?
Yeah, so the simulator will show if you can get this trade line removed entirely,
Okay.
what your score would be. So a lot of times, like let's say for example, I had a $1,000 collection that came up yesterday, and you put it on my credit. I say, hey Mark, listen, can I get a letter from you saying that I can have this removed from my credit report after I pay you?
Fair
And you
enough.
say, okay. I'll say, great, here's $1,000. I need a deletion letter, where you write a letter saying, this is not, you don't even have to explain. You can just say, I agree to have this trade line reporting this deleted from so-and-so's credit report. I can upload that directly to one or all 3 bureaus, depending on who it's reporting to, and have it removed really quickly. Got it. Credit technologies may call you to verify that. Let's say your Visa has a $2,000 credit limit, and you pay it down to $200. Well, that maneuver alone may increase your score 40 points. So I'll get a statement from you, and I'll upload that directly to the portal. $75 later, in 3 or 4 days, you may have 40 more points. Now, you may have an old collection. Paying that off will actually reduce your credit. So the simulator will also tell me if I shouldn't touch anything, or if it makes no difference at all, if something's paid off or not. So it'll specifically tell me what to do for different trade items. And then if you have no credit, that probably would be the problem also, where you would need a trade line or something like that. So more times than not, I run into a typical customer for me is someone who has $200,000 now, currently has $10,000 in income, has a 700 plus credit score, has no time now for anything, and wants to quit their job, has moderate general contractor experience. They have a lot of savvy and a sense of urgency for what they're doing now, and an unknown sense of urgency for whatever they may fall into in the near future. So it's kind of a question mark. Okay? Now, depending on their age and goals, if we're still talking about my average customer, they're usually in their mid-50s, and they want to get their time back. So they want to continue to make $10,000 a month in income. They want to keep at least, this is usually disposable, this is usually in excess to an IRA or 401k or some other equity position. They want to keep at least, they want to use a majority of that, so I'll say subtract out 150k. They want the majority of this back, and they're usually pretty intelligent, so the rest of this can be made to work. Okay? So, what instrument does someone who meets this criteria use to accomplish this goal? Depends on the person. Could be business, could be an apartment building.
And elapsed time.
Yeah. It could be, it's personal. So,
Probably not flip, it'll generate, take a lot of time, right?
for one of my best customers, he's flipping it, he's grinding it. But, you know, he has the time, because his business allows him to be remote. So, he has the time to do 5 flips a year. But it's strenuous, because during the period of time where you're cashing out all this money, you know, some of the smartest things I ever heard was there's 2 types of money. Cash it, money coming in, and money going out. Okay? It's all money going out in the beginning during the fix and flips. You do 4 fix and flips, you're just hemorrhaging money until you sell your first house. So, is that the best deal? Or maybe you just want to suck it up and go into something commercial that's triple net. Or maybe you want to go for a high capping apartment complex in the middle of nowhere.
Right, can you explain triple net and how you make that decision?
Triple net, like the commercial building, is the tenants are responsible for the taxes, the maintenance, and the utilities.
So you just collect monthly check.
Yep. It's a good
Revenue to the
13.
landlord.
And what's the appreciation model in triple net? Only rent increases? That's it?
No, the building should appreciate too, you know? So, I mean, it's relatively more conservative in commercial, I'd
It's
say
kind of like bonds,
4%.
there's not much going on. You know, so I'm not sure why you'd buy on triple net versus a foreign corporate bond.
I mean, the commercial buildings I've seen, have you worked with commercial buildings much?
I've looked at multi-use warehouse
Okay.
and cap rate 6%, I'd rather,
On what, in what cities have you looked?
Atlanta.
Okay. So, my customers that looked at middle, what's it called, what's that town?
Milledgeville?
Milledgeville? Yeah. There was absolutely nothing built. And that building was bought for $120,000. Like 4 years ago, during the recession. It was 2011. It was renovated, and it was improved and sold, you know, for $620 or $875, depending on how you see it. So in the situations I've seen with commercial has been the best game. In the restaurant business, it's been the best game for the successful businesses. in most businesses where the business has been successful, the business commercial property has been the A game. The apartment buildings are a close second. I've seen a lot of people really thrive with these well-picked apartment buildings. So, if someone's willing to sink some money into some passive income, I love apartment buildings. On commercial, I would only go into something that's already got long-term tenants because they can't be vacant for so long. So this commercial building, I would want to have a talk to the current tenant and see if they're going to be vacant. I personally wouldn't do any fix and flips because of what I've already told you guys. But that's just me, you know, that's just me being honest with myself and knowing how bad I would neglect them. Because I don't have the crews and I don't have the people in place, and I just have a big I don't care feeling that comes over me on some Saturday mornings because I have to get over there. You know, how much is this costing me? $600 here, $600 to stay in my PJs and watch a movie. I'll take two. You know, it's a real problem. But I've got to be honest with myself. It's not me.
So in the case of this gentleman here, the assets were 200,000. You said he's willing to go what, negative 150?
Yeah, spend 150.
Oh, of that 200.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So 30% loan to value, that might put him in a $500,000 building.
Sure. But that's not going to, you know, put him in a commercial building. It's not going to fill his time. I mean, he'll get the income and then he can have time to go play golf or whatever if he does a triple net building.
Maybe.
So he wants more personal time.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Well, this is a hypothetical, so we could say anything.
Yeah.
But this is an example. Really, to get to this number, you'll need 300K here.
And why's that?
I'm thinking $1 million building at 70% loan to value.
And 10 cap, yeah, right.
Yeah, we'll get you that.
$1 million and 10 cap is 10,000.
Yeah.
But Rick, as we look to the future here, well, let's say we're looking at this from a five-year perspective. During that next 5 years, it's probably, not guaranteed, we're going to have an economic downturn. You may dispute that, most people don't, but they think that there's going to be some sort of economic downturn in the next
2
5
years ago, those same people were saying 3 years from now.
I'm not arguing with you.
So it's always a moving market.
Of course, I'm not arguing with you. The point I'm trying to say is, let's say that there is going to be some sort of economic downturn in the next 5 years. Let's just use that scenario.
Yep.
Whether it's right or not, who knows?
Yeah.
In this case, for this person here, does he necessarily want to go into something that may be considered risky over that 5-year period if he knows that there may be a downturn?
If this person thinks there's a downturn, they should get more involved in the apartment buildings and micro-unit housing.
In what, micro, what?
Smaller housing units, small housing units.
Sounds like it's gonna be a trend in the future. You're saying micro, is that another word for duplexes, or are you saying single family?
Micro is like a 250 to 450 square foot apartment, one bedroom. Real small apartments.
Very
A lot of, it's the balance to the gentrification. It's a very, it's the new wave to the lower income,
Oh, like
but
pad split.
cute lifestyle mode of operation.
You mean like pad split, that type of thing?
Pet split?
Pad split,
Uh,
you know what I'm talking about?
no, it's just small apartments,
Okay.
small affordable apartments.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those are your two defensive areas that you see as apartments and small?
Cheap apartments, yes. So we're expecting more commercial space to be rezoned to residential. There's a lot more companies doing things virtually. There's a lot less need for commercial space, and there's a lot of business, a lot of community development plans are already showing that. The rain came in.
You jinxed it.
So you're gonna see commercial becoming cheaper. We've already seen apartments becoming, seeing less growth. Now, less growth is not the same thing as a decline.
Right.
We're talking about less improvement when we say less growth. So, 2% growth is sustaining slightly less than inflation.
Right.
But commercial is all about cherry picking the right commercial spot and where. And it'll always be there, obviously, it's commercial. Apartment buildings, some of the same things, but I've seen them so cheap now that they can't possibly, it would be very difficult to lose on them unless you just run out of money during the renovation phase or run into some sort of bad stretch where you can't complete your project. Fixing and flipping, which is the most popular, is by far the riskiest step. Not saying that a lot of people don't do it, sharpen their pencils and kick ass. There are plenty that do on a regular basis. But from a success failure perspective, it's the riskiest. The short-term buy and holds, single family, are the least riskiest, have the highest success rate, and almost any novice can do it. And it's a good way to make those 3 to 5 year gains.
Now, when you say short-term buy and hold, what are you talking about, short-term?
3 to 5 years.
Okay, so basically what you're doing is in that one example you gave before, is you buy it, you fix it, you hold it, and then you may sell it on exit via seller financing or a lease option.
Yeah, or open market.
Or open market, right, through MLS or FMLS, exit. Okay. How about, you talked about 2 ways before, which is the stronghold method, which is what everybody can do, or the other way, which is way 2, which is the house hopper sort of thing. Regardless of whether we have a downturn or not, it's argument, we could disagree on that, is the house hopper can work in any sort of environment, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, almost. I mean, if there's fewer renters and as long as your debt service coverage ratio is sustained, is enough to cover for a couple of vacancies and some maintenance, then the house hopper requires the least amount of capital.
Right.
That's why has the highest rate of success, because the cost of borrowing is the lowest and the capital infusion is the least.
Right. Now, one of the reasons why I came here is one of the presentations you made a long time ago that I had sat through. You had said, the difference between you and a lot of mortgage brokers is that you survived the last downturn, whereas many of the newer mortgage brokers that are out there now never did. And so as a consequence, they may or may not know all the products, they may or may not recognize the different change in environment. The question I have for you, based upon your experience, is that if we were to go through a downturn, will many of these products, or how will the products' availability change and the requirements change in regards to people applying for these different loans?
Okay. So, in 2008, which really started in 2004 and 2005, I don't think we had an arm's length transaction in Atlanta since like 2004.
Yep.
Cash out purchases left and right.
Right.
That's considered fraud now, and they'll put you under the jail for it. Also, we had the mortgage-backed securities, and we had the rating systems that were being influenced by the note sellers.
Right.
So it was the corrupt rating system. Now, the mortgage secondary market is common sense underwriting run by a savvy secondary market that have investors that they answer to on a portfolio performance level. It's night and day different.
Right.
When you take away the consumer's ability to spend based on the consumer's ability to cash out refinance. It creates huge ripple effect in every industry. And so that's one reason why we're not gonna be headed to the same cyclical effect that we were in 2005 and headed towards in 2008. Now, you can expect to see a commercial correction because there's so much virtual space now, so much consolidating the space. You know, we don't really need libraries like we used to. A lot of schools are becoming homeschooled. A lot of the physical locations are just being consolidated. So, but what effect does that really have on the average American consumer? It's a limited effect. It's a limited negative effect. I'm also a big believer in that it was never 2018 before. And I can prove that as a matter of fact. This is the first time it was this year. So we were
Math skills, right? Math
we were,
skills.
thank you. We were never ever at this point in time before. So everyone 4 years ago predicted we would have a crash in 2017 because of the cyclical effect of the crash of the market. They know as little now as they knew then. Okay? When any of us can see 1 minute into the future, meet me at the horse track race. Until then, the future is in our hands. As long as we continue to operate responsibly from a consumer lending standpoint, which the brain is on, it's polished. We have the best secondary market intelligence that I have ever seen, by far, hands down. As long as we are this sharp as we are now, we're gonna be stable and maintaining. And even if we have 0% growth, and we maintain where we are, well, compared to inflation, we can afford a reduction in growth. But Atlanta, in the 13 county metro Atlanta area, is gonna continue to see higher growth more than the national average because we're taking it from other places. So Detroit, if you've ever been there, yeah, that's gonna get hit. Florida, they're gonna see a reduction in value. But as a country, as a nation, as a whole, I think we're very safe for several years to come. Until we do something stupid to screw it up ourselves, and then it becomes us shooting ourselves in the foot.
So, and what do you do about it, like, you know, just as a matter of course, not just,
Yeah.
you said commercial, I'm sorry.
Commercial corrections are gonna happen in little bubbles, and they're gonna affect those individual sectors. But unless we do something wrong, it's not gonna have a blanket effect on the American consumer. You know, growth is our friend too. You know, we need to, if we continue to grow the population, continue to grow the GNP, hopefully produce materials domestically. But to answer your question,
Yeah.
maybe you should buy gold. Or get into micro housing.
But to your point though, the commercial real estate market's gonna, I would think, would follow somewhat a different cycle than the private, because the private, you know, real estate market, that's tied to the wellness of the general working public. You know, as long as people have jobs or whatever, you forecast that private real estate is gonna do well. However, factors such as, you know, the shrinkage of like retail space and the shift is, you know, technology-based, you know, retail shopping. If you're investing in commercial real estate, you could be hit hard, even though we have a great GDP and other.
So investing in commercial real estate doesn't have much of an effect on society.
Right, exactly. But I'm saying you as the investor though, if you're in the commercial real estate.
Sure.
So that's something to be cognizant of.
Of course.
Yeah.
And if any one of us went bankrupt, it wouldn't necessarily have a ripple effect on any more of us collectively.
No, but I'm just saying, if your
Right.
game is commercial real estate, right? And, you know, they're, even if it's something not necessarily in your sector that you specialize in, but there's just, there's more available space, you're gonna be negatively affected.
Right. So when I look at commercial space, most times than not, I look at changing the zoning and downzoning to residential. Most
That's not happening in the counties.
Where?
They not going, depend upon the location, I mean.
Yeah, it has to be in the border of a residential neighborhood.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit more. You're gonna change its zoning from commercial to residential?
Mhm.
For what, and how are you going to change, what type of residential are you gonna make it into? The mini apartment things that you were talking about a moment ago, or what?
I'm not really a high density guy, it's more other guys, I'm more of a little guy. I like churches and schools and residential neighborhoods.
And then change them into what?
Lofts or apartments.
Okay.
It's a good strategy. They're already there, not much to do to flip them. But if you have a commercial building, like the one we saw with the Dollar General, there's no way in hell that's ever gonna happen.
No.
That's gonna stay commercial as part of the zoning plan. It's all about that building staying there. And Dollar Generals are very bear market stores.
Right.
So that's a good bear market building, especially with a long-term lease and a 13 cap. So don't rule out commercial, it's still always gonna be there. Apartment buildings, very bare as well. The luxury housing, the higher end homes, those are aggressive. So that would be what you wanted to get out of. So when you develop your plan, you have to decide what you feel good about, and then from there, pick the capital infusion and the income rate. But don't rule out businesses. If you got a business and you're good at it, and by good at it means you're making money at it, as that is the measure of success, unless you're in education, that's, the growth of the youth of tomorrow or something else. But if you're in business, it's measured in dollar bills, okay? Nothing else. So take that dollar bill figure, and if you can make it something that's off the chart, the business aspect is number one. Apartment buildings are nice too. Commercial space can work. Everything we've really seen tonight can work well in the right environment.
Question about like affordable housing. Are you aware of any programs that the city of Atlanta has or any other municipalities to encourage people, investors or builders to create affordable housing in
Yeah.
gentrified communities?
Yeah, there's a number of grants, but I don't qualify for any of them because I don't have the construction business in place and I don't have the infrastructure. One of the guys that hosts the subgroup with me on the venture capital group, Stan, just got a $2 million grant at 2% to do micro housing at this school on Catherine Street, across from the Mercedes Stadium in Pittsburgh. And but he has the infrastructure. He has a construction company, and he acquired the building, and he got the grant to convert it into micro housing. And that's he's expecting to positively cash flow about $25 grand a month, 45 units, and then 10 commercial bottom units. Brilliant plan. I personally wouldn't have come up with the same plan because I'm not a saturation guy. I'm more of a pride of ownership guy. I wouldn't want to have a high density facility just because of my own personal mental functions. But he doesn't have those handicaps, so he's able to go into something with highest best use in mind. And he did that from an analytical perspective, and I'm proud of him for it, and I learned a lot from that guy too. So, and he's got, we actually looked at the same building to buy, and I would have done a completely different thing with it. And You know, I would have turned it into smaller townhomes because it was 3 stories all the way up, all the way around. He would have turned it into micro housing. But I would have spent a lot less. Like, my business model would have spent 1.2 million, his business model spent 2.5 million. But his is not, he doesn't have an exit strategy. This is a long-term hold. So it's an example of 2 people looking at the same thing, seeing 2 completely different things, you know. And in my world, I would have wanted to be in and out. In his world, he would long-term buy and hold. So it's more than one way to get a Reese's cup. You know, a lot of people are can completely disagree and have completely opposite opinions and both be completely correct at the same time. So this is your assignment, guys. This is what questions you need to answer for yourselves. And if you want to slide them over and bring them out tomorrow, we're going to start making some real-world scenarios. And then if we do it individually, or a group session, or a workshop, or however we want to do it, that's going to be what we do tomorrow. Today you got the foundation. You saw 7 different types of productions. And tomorrow we're going to put your plan into place. Because the hardest decision that you have as an investor is how much money to spend and when, and how to allocate it. And I hope to help you with that nerve-wracking decision, because it's no skin off my teeth, and who else to bounce it off besides someone who is not fully involved in your circle that can give you an impartial opinion on what you should do. Because anyone that's too close is going to have a tough time with it. And it's hardest for you.
Cool. So Rick, 200K cash and wanting 10K a month cash flow seem like both on the high side. And the folks that I interact with and the new member-ish, I don't really have a handle on what the average liquid they might have, but it might be closer to 20 to 40, 20 to 50, and they're just looking for 3, 4, 5 thousand a month, and probably 3 would be fine to start. Yeah, rental.
So under 50, you can go ahead and systematically eliminate your larger commercial projects,
Right.
the larger apartment building projects, and basically strategies, 5, 6, and maybe you might get lucky on some owner financing commercial building with the right numbers. But really, you're going to be doing a owner-occupied investment strategy.
The hopper or hopper plus buy 1 rental a year.
Maybe the lucky flip. If
No, I
the
wouldn't-
gem,
yeah.
it depends on the person, it depends on the gem of a flip,
Right. I'd like to just eliminate flips from the mix, because to me, it's 2 different skill sets, buying rentals and doing flips. To me,
Well, we're
it's-
talking about a hypothetical person, so this hypothetical person can have whatever personality traits you imagine that. What if this hypothetical person with $50,000 is a fantastic rehabber and has the opportunity to buy a house for $70,000 that's worth $200,000 fixed up that's next to his house? And it would, and flipping that would be the greatest thing he did. It would be a great way to double his savings.
Your house hopper had the charts for how fast the income grows, so you could just pull the 10,000 or my 3,000 straight off the chart.
Yeah.
3 houses, you're 4 houses in, each house behind has 400 plus cash flow.
Yes.
So that right there is a cookie
Absolutely.
cutter.
Absolutely. Good, great for a new investor.
Or you don't move and you use 80% LTV conventional rehab or rental financing. So based on your household's free cash flow from whatever your job is, so there's a missing column there. There's net cash, assets, but there's also free cash flow. I think it's really important to add, what is your free cash flow?
Okay, so like disposable cash on hand?
No, that's in the bank. My house produces $1,500 a month more than I spend. So that's $1,500 I can put on another bill.
Right.
So free cash flow, cash flow.
So just positive
That's,
cash
yeah.
flow.
Right, there's,
No.
yeah, FC, free cash flow, yeah. So, if you had, let's just pick a number, 1,500 free cash flow, that means in 10 months, you get 1,500, that might be a down payment on a rental. And so that means plus rehab, another 3 months. So you would buy a rental, one rental a year, just off your free cash flow.
We call it investable cash flow.
Really, we need to have a schedule of real estate for those of us who have several properties to determine what our equity positions are. A lot of times, we restructure things, move things around, and increase this number dramatically by pulling out and
HELOCs and
leveraging.
cash out refis, right?
Yeah. So, this is an oversimplified approach, and it takes some analytics, but it's designed to get people thinking on which direction they're leaning, because if in a month from now, or 2 months, or even 3 months, everyone has the focus to know exactly what they want to do over the next 5 to 7 years, then this class has been a huge success.
Yeah.
This is a bit, I should understand this just from what we're talking about. But why would an investor choose a Class A, something that has like a 6% cap rate, a $2 million loan, it's a 6% cap rate, leverage, versus one that has a higher cap rate? Is it just their cash on cash that's gonna be superior?
A lot of your international investors love the low cap rates because there's no maintenance. So if you're, let's say you're Chinese or Brazilian, your currency's deflated to the dollar, and if you put in something at a 6% cap while you're having hyperinflation, 16% cap. So when you convert your currency back to your country's currency, you made remarkable returns. So a lot of those, that's why you have a lot of international investors at low caps.
So well maybe not the down level, just like for, potentially for just, people in the class, why would you actually select why would you actually choose a lower cap rate multifamily?
Nicer buildings and.
So is it true that, the cap rates correlate, the opposite correlation with valuations in the area?
Yep.
So declining valuations, rising cap rates?
There's a general trade-off between appreciation and cap rate, right? You buy a Class D property or, C property and get 14, 15 cap rate, but it's probably not gonna go up in value, and you're gonna have hassles, you're gonna have evictions and
Right,
turnovers.
expense ratio and effort to manage.
Yeah.
I mean, I bought myself an Alpharetta, I don't even know I own it, but nobody here probably would have bought it based on the cap rate. But it's, it's gone up in value 2.5 times. So you gotta look at your total return and your hassle factor, right? So it's definitely a trade-off.
It goes back to the strategy,
If you
right?
need the cash flow, then
Yeah.
you can't afford the luxury of buying a high Class B or Class A. But if you
Like
don't
if you're
need the
getting-
cash flow, and you're building for the future,
Yeah.
you can make out even better with a lower cap rate property, right?
Is it not the case that sometimes, I mean, it's more speculative, that your higher cap properties have the greater potential for appreciation? I mean,
Generally, no.
That's
No? Or, no? Okay, that's where I'm misunderstanding.
The opposite.
That's the holy
Yeah.
grail, to buy a high cap rate property in an area that also gentrifies, and so you get both. And it can happen, and maybe it does happen once in a while, but it's highly speculative. Right? I mean, you can buy in some bad area in Atlanta and get a high cap rate property and hope the area gentrifies and hope your property
Yeah.
goes up. If
Generally-
you do, you hit a big home run.
Yeah, generally speaking, you wanna hold on to it for the cash flow. For us, anything that's high cap. Or great debt service coverage. I feel as if you guys got debt service coverage, cap rate down to the quick now, right?
So my wife and I, 8 years ago, we didn't have a choice. We were getting older. We knew the ability for us as a team to execute on building to becoming financially independent from both working W-2 jobs, having no source of no passive source of income, just active income from working. We wanted to go from active working to not working and living a great lifestyle off passive income. We knew at our age we had a limited number of years left in our bodies, a limited number of years left in our brains, because it takes physical work and brain power. This urgency is the ability to actually get up in the morning and go out and do something. And we had limited time. So we had only one strategy. Buy high cap rate houses in the path of progress that was going to be low effort to manage and high appreciation, so that I could refinance in 2 or 3 years and pull out the cash and buy another one, and then buy another one. We had the luxury of some cash on hand, but we also had unusual circumstances. High free cash flow. We have no kids, live way below our means, drove old cars, never bought clothes, never went on vacations, never did anything that spent money. So we had free cash flow that we could organically buy a rental every 6 months just from our free cash flow. Then we had some cash. So we put all the cash as fast as possible on nice houses in good school districts that would appreciate, that I could refinance and buy more houses. So that strategy, hockey stick, is after about 10 rentals and still working your day job, putting all of the rent, free cash flow, on the next down payment, plus our W-2 job, household free cash flow, all on the next down payment. First year, 2 houses. Second year, 4 houses. Third, somewhere around 5. Year 5, 10 houses in 1 year, because we're plowing everything forward and living off our W-2 jobs. Year 6, 6 houses, 7 houses. Slowing down. So, but we were living off our W-2 jobs and maintaining leverage to buy the next house. And just like his charts, when you got 25 houses, all appreciating, you're growing equity like crazy. You can refi that out and buy the next wave. So we were gifted because my wife is a school teacher. Instinctively, we didn't know any other way. We bought in decent schools, Norcross High School, 8 out of 10. Those houses, we're all in for 75. They are selling for 175 today. In 6 years, they appreciated $100,000 because we knew buying in the path of progress, Norcross's path of progress, near in good schools, they'd appreciate.
single family has the best appreciation,
Right.
fastest.
So I bought REO, these are all bank owned. They need to be fixed, and then the appreciation is based on retail exit. And so that was my strategy because I wanted to quit my day job as fast as possible. I didn't have a date, fast as possible. So when you put the pedal to the metal with no choice but to accomplish as fast as possible before our bodies and minds gave out, we had only one choice.
Which goes up first, Kurt? The body or the mind?
So,
I'm beginning to leave
depends how
the
lucky you are. Here's my question for you, Kurt. When you have a couple $1 million in equity, do you ever think to channel it into a consolidated project and simplify your management?
So Steve, that's the core of what he talks about is selling all this equity and buy stock. I'm in a period.
I get this reputation.
We're gonna start Georgia stock investment.
That's part of what I talk, that's step 2 and 3 of what I talk about. Step 1 is buy real estate highly.
So you aren't there yet, but you will be there, and I am stuck in the middle of not having a decision of what I want to do next. I'm just, because management is so little effort, nothing is motivating me to change.
Can I say something about Kurt?
Okay.
He is amazing in that all his renters feel like homeowners. He's got this Jedi mind trick going on thing where his renters are like, you're a homeowner, congratulations. All the maintenance is your responsibility, don't call me about anything. How do you have 45 properties and nothing to do maintenance-wise? Because you're a Jedi, that's why.
No, I fix ACs.
Okay.
I have septic systems that plug up.
Okay.
It's no big deal. I just make one phone call and I don't worry about it.
Right.
You know?
So, Kurt's evolution was horizontal. You know, a lot of times people buy properties, buy multi-properties, manage them like pros, and that's the whole story. And that's fantastic. A lot of times people's evolution are different. Someone may go from a stronghold strategy to a house hopper strategy to a investment property strategy, mix some flips in there, decide to sell things off, go to an apartment building, go to a commercial space, move on to a bigger commercial space, expand into the hotel business, and God knows what. I've seen more people's personal developments go from single family to multifamily to commercial more times than not, until they're afraid something's gonna go bare, and then they'll go the opposite direction, back to multifamily from commercial, back to liquidating their properties to fewer houses. So I see the evolution go 1 to 7 or 1 to 6, and then back down the opposite way when people go bare. Bull forward, bear back.
So I'll just give my take on what about the downturn. So, Steve, if you're looking at a stock market downturn, what do the professional managers rotate into? Defensive stocks.
Defensive sectors is one strategy.
Safer.
Which would be utilities and
Right. So what is the
bonds, less
analog
stocks.
in my space is single family. But I play commercial, I'm a part owner in a mobile home park. So I drank the commercial tea. I took a lot of boot camps in multifamily. So I started that process, so I'm educated. So what is the analog in single family to defensive stocks? Quality houses. I'm not talking about expensive houses. I'm not talking about $60,000 junkers inside in a rough area. I'm talking about houses that anyone would want. 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, cute little thing, not big, 1,200 square feet to 1,400, 1,500 square feet. Not too big because you spend too much and too much in rehab. a nice little 1,300 or 1,400 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. I paint that door red, and it's on the inside of a neighborhood, 10 minutes to a freeway, 30 minutes to good jobs, and the schools are okay. In a downturn, that house will be in demand. So it's just, what is a safe investment? Either it's commercial or warehouse or apartments or single family. What is a safe house that someone's always going to rent? That's what's safe. So low cost basis, I like high DSCR. That means your mortgage is low, and your rent is high. That means problems hit, drop rent. More problems that drop rent. Well, I'm still positive cash flow. So don't overspend on houses where you've got very little free cash flow off the house. Have some margin. Buy nice houses with, you don't overpay, and the rents are decent. There are areas in Atlanta where I'm seeing $85,000 houses to $95,000 that are okay, 100 to 110 that are a little better, 10 to 15 fix up. They rent for $1,200 rent, so that's about the 1%. They're nicer subdivisions, or they're okay. I don't buy in nicer subdivisions. I buy okay subdivisions. 10 minutes to the freeway, because I cater to blue collar. I won't buy that Loganville house or that Villa Rica house. I don't care how nice it is, because the commute will eventually kill that tenant. I want the commutes to be okay. Decent schools, okay neighborhood. So to me, it's a safe investment. That's my strategy.
And,
So that's one of the reasons I get into student housing. That's a very defensive segment of the market. If anything, when unemployment is up, more people go to school because they can't find a job or whatever, they want to improve themselves. And I experience nothing in any downturn, and I've been in it since, what, 79? And in Alpharetta, for the area, I have cheap housing, right? I'm about the cheapest stuff you can buy in Alpharetta. And so there's a good solid demand for basic housing, and I experience no issues in the downturns there either, so I agree a lot with what Kurt, and Kurt and I are both in crazy niches. I mean, he's out all over the place. I was up in Clemson. I'm in condos. You find a niche you're comfortable with. What's your price point? Make sure it's gonna have a strong demand in a downturn, and you can ride out a recession.
So, Rick, regardless of whatever strategy, whether it be Kurt or Steve's here, is some quick questions here, or even in the house hopper sort of thing. Is if you're in the house hopper, you could be using the prime loans, as we had talked about earlier, where you can go up to, what, 95, 97% on that, and do that 1 year. Or if you're gonna be doing a Kurt strategy where you would be in a non-owner occupied, you're having to come up with 20% down, correct?
yeah,
Okay, pretty much.
in this market now.
In this market now, why are you hesitating, just so from, that may change, and if so, how would it change?
Well, you gotta know Kurt, he buys some foreclosures, sometimes they're distressed, they need renovation.
Right.
And he's using all self-directed IRA money.
Right.
So if it is a
But
stabilized
I
property.
mean, if you could acquire the house, let's say,
Yeah.
whether it be private money, whether it be hard money, whether it be you're using HELOC or whatever, you fix it up to a rent-ready level and then refinance
Yeah.
out of it.
20%.
You could do 20% down,
Yeah,
or have the equity in the house be equivalent to 20%.
if it's, what do you mean?
In other words, you buy for 50,000, you put in $10,000 of renovation, it appraises at $100,000. You could refinance it at 80, and you'd cover your out-of-pocket costs that you had up front when you acquired it as a foreclosure or whatever.
Cash out refinances are at 70.
Okay, cash out, okay, that's why I'm asking the question, so
Yeah.
70% for that. Okay, now, if you were gonna be doing a condo strategy, like Steve recommends, are you at 70% or 80%, or the same sort of situation of 8% if you were gonna acquire, or 70% if you were
It's
refi?
80% if it's, unless it's unless a condominium association has issues, then it's gonna be 70 with the non-agency lender.
Okay.
And that's more common than not. It's very common these days.
So condos are generally usually 70%, you say?
No, if the condo association has,
Oh, limits as far as the number of rentals, that sort of thing?
what's the word for it?
Non-warrant.
Non-warrantable.
Right.
It's a non-warrantable condo association, you're limited to 70% usually by a non-agency lender.
Got
If it's a warrantable condo, you can usually go 80% loan to value.
Got it. Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
And so, these guys have gone different directions as well, from each other, and probably from what I would do.
Sure. Look, the magic about the whole thing is leverage, so you talk to this guy early on and find out what you qualify for and how to qualify, how to get your credit score up. If you can get the right financing, it's all, you almost can't screw up, because the leveraging is gonna get you a shitload
On the
of.
right project, on the right
Delete
type,
that.
on the right type of building that makes sense for you. What makes sense for you? Is it a mixed use, office / quad? Is it a, something you can run a business out of, and something you can rent part of it, and something you can live in part? Is it a, number of condos, is it a number of apartments, a number of buildings? So that's the personal decisions that, I hope to help you guys arrive at.
And so how do we have you help us arrive at it again? You've told us once before, but tell us again. We can either meet with you one-on-one or do it as a group thing tomorrow?
So tomorrow, we're gonna go through some scenarios, and we'll probably meet one-on-one. Those of you that want me to look at your tax returns, bring those with you. Those of you that want to pull your credit, we can. We're gonna do some workshop time, we're gonna do some group time, we're gonna freestyle it, no rules. And we're gonna play hard work fair.
So the cash out, commercial property,
Uh-huh.
cash out based on the appreciated value, how long does that take? Like
1 year,
that's
you
the
can
age,
go off.
what, 12 months, 6 months?
Okay, so
Acquired
For-
property,
So there's not one set of rules, there's several set of rules. So on a non-agency refinancing out of a hard money deal, you can go off appraised value in 3 months. Now, if you were gonna try to refinance out of this commercial deal, you'd have to wait a year to go appraised value. But Jose made it impossible to make that a net tangible benefit by giving a 0% interest rate and an 8.75 purchase price, so he's obviously gonna wait 5. But on a commercial property, it's normally a year towards appraisal.
12 months.
12 months.
Property, there's no loan against that property. How long you have to own it?
You can go off the purchase price
So how long?
immediately.
And then after that, appreciated value?
Then after that,
How long does it take for you to hit the, like, so I guess what I'm saying,
you can go off the purchase price right away.
and how long you have to wait until?
To go off the appraised value, a year on a commercially zoned property with a commercial loan.
Just real quick, there's been some discussion recently on deal makers about HELOCs on rental property. Any comments on that?
I've seen a couple come across. I noticed Lima One's criteria was $250,000 liquid and 25 houses a year, and they'll give you a HELOC.
25 houses a year?
Yeah. I still have yet to close one of those. So in my world, they haven't really proven to be in existence yet. Still, the only people that I know of doing HELOCs are banks on owner-occupied primary residences. At up to usually 80, but Bank of North Georgia does 85. That's extensive. Yeah, I'd love to see it. Someone says they've done something, asking for a settlement statement. Quite much.
Somebody recommended, was it a credit union?
There's some credit union, yeah.
Now, credit unions can start doing whatever they want, like if you're a tiny bank and then and you're ran by, you know, a committee like we are, you can start making up your own stuff as long as everyone agrees on it. You know, so, you know, I've ran into a couple builders that had wild lines of credit from their local banks, but it was completely dreamt up in someone's witch's brew. It's not from any standard secondary market guideline, I can tell you that.
Doesn't sound right, tiny banker?
Well, and that's, yeah, and they got smaller.
Where was that?
Steve was making a joke, but that's why we lost so many banks during the last downturn, is because there were so many that had, you know, developer loans out that were crazy, just absolutely nuts.
Yeah. So, you know, sometimes, I mean, a lot of people can do a few people can do things I can't, because most everything I do is investor pooled, secondary market, common sense underwriting. You know, so I don't have a lot of wild and crazy stuff.
Okay, so tomorrow, what time are we operating from?
All right, so I was planning on going from 1 in the afternoon till whenever.
Okay.
Yeah.
No breakfast?
I was gonna go to church and pray for your soul. All right, thank you.
You may want to delay that till 2, because we need more prayers than that.
I'm gonna go a little early.
Okay.
So, let's hope for everyone.
Okay, so 1 to 4?
We'll start at 1, and then depending on how we do it, if it's gonna be group discussion or one-on-one discussion, people who have their stuff together can come in, come out. If it's group and you want to share, then we can share. But we're gonna start running through some scenarios and doing it either one-on-one or group. It'll probably be a workshop environment, since a lot of you look like you wanna keep your personal information private.
Cool.
Sound like fun?
Yeah.
Anyone have any questions about today? No? All right.
I got one parting thing. I'm sorry to do that, guys.
No,
it's
sorry,
a
let's not clap it out.
I put this to Steve. It'd be interesting to know if anybody has developed or uses any spreadsheets. It's not particularly useful. I know that the one that Rodney had cooked up from the passive income course has helped me in assessing deals. And it was the one that was sort of in the can, could let me calculate annual payoff, put all the excess cash flow on the mortgage. But as far as anything that sort of helps you build scenarios for acquiring a portfolio.
I usually take a scenario and then graph it. So like, for example, the amount of time it would take to do a generic house hopper scenario would be taking the present value of every property every year, putting it on a chart, and then taking the amortization schedule, putting that on the chart. It's just, I don't do it because it's too time consuming and too theoretical. In practice, I do it on a formula basis, but to chart something out for educational purposes, I've never spent a day per chart to create that.